to the podcast today. Wednesday, May 14th. We've been a little slow lately. Not so many guests, some other responsibilities here at the station. If you want to win tickets to the weekend, listen to the station this weekend for a keyword to text to win those. And then something lined up for some special programming for Memorial Day weekend. I think we will look back 25 years. And thank goodness it's come on our corporate calls, which get sent down to me. Stop saying Happy Memorial Day. In fact, maybe we should even stop having car sales and selling grills during it's Thank You Memorial Day. Thanks to this person. Thanks to Alex for connecting me to this person who connected me to another person. And we finally got some time to catch up. He's a busy man at the University of Toledo, environmental science professor Todd Crail, always in my feed on Facebook, which is totally fine. He is somebody directly affected by the cutting of funds. You might have heard something very technical, educational, SB1. Todd has wonderful and unfortunately somewhat pessimistic, rightly so, perspective on what that is. And it's been a while since we've had a deeper conversation about all the things happening in our country right now. I was surprised to find out Todd is a little more conservative, but we have a great discussion over the next hour. Stegosauruses and Triceratops even make their way into this enlightening conversation, which begins now. This is, I'm not using this for our community affairs show because I figure things get a little wily, which that's totally fine because it'll be podcast only. So let it rip.
Let it rip?
Yeah. And with that, welcome. Good to finally meet you after, has it been 3 years?
It's been a minute. Yeah, it's good to meet you too. Person here. Yeah.
Did you come just to ask me to thank you for introducing introducing me into Nate Kosicki, the Bird King?
Well, we had to get him in here.
Yeah.
That was a definite. We had to get him in there. My life has been insane since COVID for a number of reasons. And I have not had the extra bandwidth to do anything extra. Okay. So that's why I hadn't offered to be in here until now.
He's awesome.
He is amazing.
I wish he was on the internet a little bit more. I'd chat with him. I'd have an even closer friendship with him. I didn't invite him in for this year's biggest week in birding.
Yeah.
I know he's probably super busy at the parks.
He is a busy boy.
I didn't know what new stuff we do. I could have recycled the old stuff, but it's a cool thing that all these people come here to this area for birds.
Yes. I was just out at Ottawa dropping off plants for their plant sale, and it's the madness.
So you saw more people you're speaking Ottawa?
At Ottawa. I didn't go back to McGee, but I was at the Ottawa Visitor Center, and it was hopping for a Tuesday.
McGee?
Or Wednesday.
And what's the other big one that people come out for birding?
For birding, they'll go over to Howard Marsh as well.
Gotcha.
That's the Metro Park one.
Right.
And then Maumee Bay's good too. I mean, anywhere is good. Nate on campus, I think he got 60 species on campus in one day.
Of course he did.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I try to get across in my classes is like, you have to understand, even if you don't value this place, all the people from the pretty places value this place.
What's a pretty place?
Montana. I mean, you know, California, you look in these parking lots and it says California, Washington, Oregon, Montana. It says Maine, New Hampshire, North Carolina, South Carolina, all the other places that we keep trying to escape to. And that is who's here to see our birds.
You are a deep intellectual because you were able to split your brain. When you speak of the state, you say Oregon.
Yes.
Good for you. Next question, and maybe we'll cycle back to birding. Yeah. Did you come here to talk about the pedestrian bridge?
There's a pedestrian bridge.
Did you know this?
About which?
Your pedestrian bridge.
Yes. What about it?
Did you come here for that?
No, I did not come here for a pedestrian bridge.
Did you come here to talk about Pete Rose?
I mean, I can. I saw your post this morning, and it'll be interesting to see what they do, won't it?
I asked these questions, and I had another one because I did not prepare for this interview. even though things have cooled down just a little bit in your world, in academia, I don't think they've taken any more money away in the last
not yet.
week to 10 days or so. But I figured I'd just have you in and let you rip. However, I think you know that I am disappointed that you did not wear your...
I almost grabbed it. I made that choice, Eric. I made that choice.
What color? What color do you call it?
I call it a shirt. You call it Colonel Mustard.
Yes. You have some interesting colors when we go to the spectrum of yellows and oranges.
There is probably some spectrum involved.
Yeah, and with your glasses, which are also quite dapper, you do look like Colonel Mustard. You could have walked up on stage at the Stranahan last week, and they would have been like,
rocked it. Yeah,
that guy did.
That guy is it. Yeah.
Colonel Mustard Crail. In the cafeteria at UT with a football helmet.
Yes, that would be amazing.
So what did you want to come talk about?
I'm here to talk about what you want to talk about.
Well,
but I think interesting thing is SB1.
Yeah, explain exactly what that is, because I think when some people read that, they tune out because it's the name of a bill and they don't look to see what's going on.
Okay, so this is SB1 is a bill that our Ohio State Legislature just passed. I don't know if you saw the petition signing that's going on this evening. This will be out of date by the time you air, but there is petitions for referendum. The bill is to the intention of the bill is to get rid of controversial topics and controversial organization and controversial administration at the different state universities. There are some who believe that the way these places are set up favors some versus others, and they're trying to get rid of what they're calling discrimination out of our schools.
My question is, to put a blanket on this, to what you just said, anything that could be DEI related by the current administration, we'll leave it at that.
DEI and controversial topics.
So anything could be controversial.
They list them. They don't define what about them, but they list them.
What's on that list?
The list they gave was so DEI, but also included in that is abortion and climate.
Okay,
that's what they wrote. Climate.
Okay. Are those the only two that could be deemed controversial?
Those are the two. No, there were others, and I apologize that I don't have them all off the top of the head. The two that affect me would be in teaching environmental science are particularly the climate, but also talking about abortion because of population.
If you threw in religion with that, which is tangentially connected to both of those are the things that, if you meet somebody in an elevator, you know you shouldn't talk about right away because they can be hot button topics.
Exactly.
I guess my concern would be, would that ever, and this has spilled over into education at all levels in other states when it comes to looking through a new lens at the Civil War.
Yes.
I am not concerned, but we know that there are plenty of people who are like, Holocaust? What Holocaust?
Right.
I'm not the kind of person who goes, if you give them an inch, they'll take a mile. But it is something that is on my radar, and it's someone who believes anything can be subjective.
Right.
This seems like a slippery slope.
It really is, and you know, I think what makes me the most irritated about this legislation is how condescending and dismissive it is to the students. That's what pisses me off.
In what way?
It's saying that they aren't smart enough to hear all the information and make a decision for themselves.
And that's essentially what all levels, especially higher education, is about, right?
That's what I do. I never politicized my science course. In fact, I have taken great lengths to make sure everybody understood that I am telling both sides of the story. Some of the story I'm not going to tell because you can walk out the doors of my classroom and get the other side of the story. I don't need to tell you money is fun. I don't need to spend any time on that. But I do need to tell you that money is not money. Money is energy. And energy is the core resource that we need. And if we don't have that, there's a problem. So how do we go about gaining that energy? Our level of affluence is directly tied to the amount of energy that we can obtain.
What energy are you speaking of?
Any energy. So almost all of Earth's energy has come from the sun, whether that was from the sun a long, long time ago or coming from the sun today in forms of solar or wind. Or you could use tidal, so that's the moon. All right, but for the most part, and you've got the sun's energy coming into the earth. It lifts water vapor into the air, and that's the whole story right there. It builds plants. Long time ago, we've been using those fossil fuels. That's old sun energy. And it's very convenient and useful. We get to the point where you and I could be sitting here talking on all this equipment because we've had that amount of affluence that's come from that energy that we've been able to harness. The problem is that when do you turn it off? Where do you stop?
Turn which off?
Turn from need. This is the way I like to talk about it. From need to want. Mm-hmm. And that's where the critical thinking goes in. And it's galling for someone to tell me that I'm not teaching critical thinking when I'm actually teaching critical thinking. But,
can you throw an example at me as you would teach your students?
So one of the foundational ideas that I work with is a model called I equals PAT, and it's the impact to the environment is equal to the population times the affluence times the technology. And everybody's very focused on population. More people, less resources. Duh. But what do you do when the average person in one country is using the same amount of resources as 57 average people in another country? And again, authoritarians don't like to hear the word equity.
I was just going to say energy equity.
They don't like to hear that.
We talk about food, water, poverty, finances, but I guess we skip over to your point. So much of that is drawn from energy.
It's drawn from energy. You know, when we have an economy, we're trading energy.
Yeah,
that's what you're actually trading. That's the real thing. The money is just currency. It's just a way of making it current, so to speak.
And those that support SB1 and things like that view that as something political, something subjective,
right,
not objective, which you explain the equation, and it is, man, you really have to twist your mind in thinking it's like lack of critical thinking. It's something more derisive than that to go, well, I don't believe A plus B equals C or 1 + 1 = 2. It's that, right?
It just had this argument with the person, and I was like, this isn't a conversation. A conversation is where we're trying to understand each other's perspectives. What you want to be is right. And you certainly don't want to hear you're wrong. And that's a different conversation. I'm not having it with people. And that's the issue with this particular bill is they want to be right. The authoritarians nail down academics immediately because they don't like to hear that they're wrong.
And we talked for one sentence about Pete Rose.
Yeah.
I'm guilty of this as well when it comes to sports. I would often rather be right with my prediction than hear another side, sure, even though I've softened. A lot of people making these decisions, a lot of people who feel like what I just said are stunningly men following sports, and it is many of those men who are in charge and unwilling to hear other perspectives. It's funny to see an inordinate amount of women in this current administration, all who look stunningly similar. Mm-hmm. It's like, unfortunately, your time will come as well. You're likely to be subjugated, just like the rest of us in some way.
So I just took a drive through Trumpistan.
Which was that?
That was all across central Indiana, western Ohio, and central Illinois. The entire time, I only saw 3 MAGA signs. They took them all down.
Because you believe they're getting blowed back? There is some regret.
Angry. Yeah. Buyer's remorse. The people that I did talk to, and I thought these conversations were going to go a very different way. They were more than ready to tell me their side of the story, which is, well, we thought he was a liar. We know he's a liar. We thought he was lying.
But
I'm like, but it's hard to not say, I hope you get what you voted for.
He tells it like it is. I'm sure
he tells it like it is.
Well, good. He is going to tell you that when the tariffs really hit, unless he continues to be beaten in these discussions, that you're not going to be able to. He did tell you it's $2 instead of $30.
That's right.
And apply that to food and things you need.
They told you what they were going to do.
Do you? I want to go backwards. We can always come back to that. Sure. I have thought this election, in a lot of ways, we heard the word elite. Mm-hmm. I was trying to figure out who elites were. Like, I would think that like anybody that almost says elite happens to be elite. Do you know who Tyler Cowen is?
No, I don't.
He's somebody I stumbled onto a bunch of years ago. He's a true, and I know you know this word. He's a true polymath.
Okay.
He is really right down the middle, but leans a little like conservative, libertarian more so, socially more liberal, brilliant guy. And I fell onto him because he is a deep mind for economics. I think that's his background. He teaches at George Mason with an Alex Tabarrok. And I fell into them during COVID because I wanted to know what the heck was going on with money, and I found them fascinating, and wonderful blog. He was one of the ones calling out a lot of this nonsense to begin with, how this is going to be bad. Mm-hmm. He, to me, is an elite. Look, you're a polymath. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if he called people elites, but it was just funny to hear people who make hundreds of thousands of dollars in their political positions calling elites. And I know what they were saying. People at a lot of universities of higher education, I would have guessed, and this is something I was thinking about, I've thought about a lot. I wanted to ask you. I know it seems like Harvard is in the news.
Yep.
The other Ivy League schools, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, whatever. Yep. I think that people who would use elites in a derogatory way, in the same way that they would use the word woke, were going after those schools because they believe that's where the elites were coming from. So I have two questions. Were those factories creating elites to take down these people who might be scared? And I'm stunned that they weren't creating more conservative mindsets, because most of the people that go to and then leave those universities are extremely affluent. And I would think that they would leave them alone.
So to answer both, it's projection. All of it's projection. They're projecting what the talking heads are projecting what they would do. The top politicians are projecting what they would do. They're saying, you're going to steal votes. You know why? Because they would steal votes. They say, you're going to be an elite force to tell us what to do because we're going to tell you what to do. And that's the galling part. Is there a ton of wokeism across or to that effect? Because keep in mind, I come from a conservative background. Is there this performative liberal mindset prevalent in higher ed? Maybe. It is in certain departments versus other departments, but that's why we have a whole community of traditions to talk about all the different components.
Is there a number that I could look, and it's so bland and vanilla, is there a number that I could look at in the Ivy League and go, when you graduate there, X amount become, or within several years of your graduation?
I don't know about that, but yes, if you want your kid to do really well, you make sure they get in.
Sure.
It's just math.
Would we ever know if they graduate or create more conservatives or liberals?
I don't know that you would know any of that. It
would be great to see, because
it would be.
When I think of those universities again, I'm thinking affluent families or with pull, and a lot of those kids will go straight from not to what those politicians are afraid of,
right,
but right to Wall Street,
right,
where their economic views align with yours.
Right.
I would almost do the inverse and come after, for lack of a better way to put it, like state schools, liberal arts schools, where you have a person going in that is probably more liberal minded.
Yeah, that may be the case, but the the people who are doing the research that fuels these kinds of questions, the doing the basic research. All right, so this was a term Joe Rogan got to find out about a few weeks ago. What basic research is, and that there's a certain amount of things that are undocumented. We don't know,
like such as
anything. When I am a scientist, it's funny. I tell this to my daughter because she gets real mad when she doesn't know, and I'm like, my whole job is to be wrong, but to find out why I was wrong, and I am wrong all the time, and it takes a tremendous amount of confidence or spectrum-y kind of behavior where you just don't care. You want to know what the answer is. We
learned this when we were very young, I think, and I think we're roughly the same age.
Yeah.
One of the first things you learned in the science class when you went to elementary school was scientific method.
Scientific method, and that's the way I teach my classes. It's make an observation, ask a question, form a hypothesis, test it, and then communicate the results and refine that hypothesis, right? It's when I got done with my PhD, I was like, wow, I don't know anything. Knowing just takes way too much work.
Right.
It just takes way too much work.
But making your own truths takes a lot less work. And you can have a highly listened to podcast or something if you go that route.
Correct.
This could be a PhD. I deeply believe that the world is where we are because in 2010, Facebook changed from chronological feed to algorithm, and it encouraged division and yelling and bombast. And unfortunately, he is great at that.
Yes.
What had people watching The Apprentice.
Right.
And
they created a character that's great at it.
Yeah.
It's a character.
And
he's become the character, but they created it for him.
But it did so much else as well. It created so much this division, got people to believe things that might be amiss.
Right.
Had the feed never gone to who can yell or get the most attention, we might be a little bit more peaceful and reasonable right now. During the last, I guess, 2 elections, I kept thinking, I just want to wake up. I mean, you're always going to disagree with a certain level of people's politics. I'm sure we were both irate when we were younger. When we went to the Gulf, not the second Gulf War, Afghanistan, and found out no WMDs.
That was the last time I voted for Republicans.
Yeah.
And it pisses me off to this day. I have to vote for Democrats. Because they're feckless.
It's like, after you're like, damn it, Bush's victory speech on that boat, and it's not fixed, and you just go back to your fantasy baseball team. Now, you have to wake up every morning and see if there's another dumpster fire on the internet.
Yeah,
I think his policies are not much different from many others, even though he is far more empowered. Yeah. I would like to just go back to quieter times of George Bush.
I totally agree with that statement. I totally agree. Bush, the first round, pre 9/11, wouldn't it be beautiful?
People like me.
What a never land we were living in.
Do you remember people like me, since we were somewhat politically opposed in some ways? But not mindset-wise or spiritually or soulfully.
Right.
People called that man abhorrent names, the devil, all these things. And I get it, wars and stuff like that. But you look back retrospectively and go, that man was a mouse compared to a lot of the things that we're enduring now.
Oh, yeah. That was nothing. We had no idea. I mean, that's where Citizens United comes in.
What's that?
Citizens United. So that was don't quote me on this, 2011, 2012, somewhere around in there, was the Supreme Court decision that gave corporations personhood.
I do remember that.
And I think that was really when it turned, because that was when the money shot up.
Yeah.
And you could buy elections. You literally could. I mean, when you can comprehend how much $100 billion is, and it's very difficult to do. If you can, spending hundreds of millions is going and buying a coffee.
Right.
Because you only need so much.
How did that exacerbate things? Because there's always been different levels of resources and influence on elections. It's so funny to me because I am, in the same way that people have perverted the idea of socialism, they're beginning to pervert, I believe, the word meritocracy.
Yes.
Like I deeply believe in that, and they're making a mockery of it. Things have never been meritocratic in many lines of government or things. How did that exacerbate things?
So what it did was it released. It's a resources thing. Back to energy, right? It suddenly releases all the energy into the system because you're able to transfer it from one account to the other and buy that influence. It begins to become its own beast. And there's nothing stopping you from doing it. You can give money to something in the dark. Nobody needs to know anymore. Why would there's a whole series of steps that follow after that point. And so, when you go back to a resources base, we've allowed people to accumulate so much because we give them those resources because they have something we want, not necessarily something we need. We don't need social media. Some days I'm like, God, my life would be so much better if I didn't look at this stupid thing.
When this job is done, first thing that goes is probably my Facebook.
Yeah, because you won't need it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I have limited myself to only Facebook because that's where I had put my photos and stuff. And
sure.
So I'm tied to that one thing. I don't have an Insta account. I don't have other things. I just stay away because there's so much more that can be learned in life than whatever's happening on that place. I
would think Instagram would be welcome in your life, doing what you do, pictures of science and Earth, and from what I've encountered, and I have a different experience from many, many people, there's far less dialogue on there.
Yeah. And that is that's what my students have tried to encourage me to do, but I'm like, I am still roped in until I am so ethically opposed to Facebook that I'm willing to pull all my crap off of there. Then I'm still riding this.
Well, if you would have forwarded that chain post that Facebook's going to own all your stuff, you would have actually kept everything, right?
Right, that's right.
We're all in this mess. We're all in this mess because we didn't forward that chain mail to our AOL account in '96.
That's right. Oh man, that's where I stepped sideways.
To rewind way backwards, how does SB1 affect your day-to-day, week-to-week, semester life?
Right now, it doesn't unless I want to be scared, and I'm not, because I don't want to work for an employer that's going to limit my speech, and someone will have to make a case that I need to go and give me a good reason to not say what it was I have been saying all along. Here is data. We read a graph. We read a table, we read these things, we interpret that information. And the people who push back on that, in particular with climate, I'll pull back some of the social justice stuff. I still think I will talk about redlining. I can't just not talk about that.
We briefly explain that.
Redlining is they're maps from the late 1930s that can predict an awful lot of things today, and including some of the people who have died at the hands of police. It's really graphic to see how those steps were put into place. Redlining was an insurance program that deemed risk. It was about risk for the insurance companies, and particularly mortgage risk. And it was discriminatory against people with melanin, and it literally says Negroes and immigrants is what it says. So whoever the immigrants of that time were, they were obviously not trustworthy to these things. So they graded neighborhoods based on the amount of risk, which from an economic standpoint is what you want to look at. But it's assuming risk based on melanin, and that's not okay.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate. I know people often refer back to The Handmaid's Tale. Yes. I've never read it, I guess, never seen it.
Yeah.
I don't need to, but I see things that take us back in time to things that I've learned in history, and it's appalling and disgusting. And that's why I go back to, okay, women who are in the administration or support him, your time will come, just like they're going after all the rest of the minorities to kick them back in time, to put them back in the place.
In their place.
Yeah.
And again, that comes up to that question of it's not a discussion on perspective. It's about being right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. And it's spaghetti on the wall. It's a bunch of straw man logical fallacies that they'll just pitch at you as fast as they can. So you're still thinking about 3 straw men ago while they're throwing the next one at you. And I've just taken up to just not. I'm going to go home.
Yeah.
Because I don't have to listen to this.
It's too much to keep up with. And I have, for more of my adult life, believed the best way to deal with a bully is to ignore them.
Yep.
And I learned within the last 10 years that, and I'm glad schools do this now, we ask the bully what's wrong with them. Mm-hmm. Why are they doing that? We have a more sophisticated mental health mindset.
We do. Absolutely.
We did not ignore him. And now in the position that he's in, he cannot be ignored. Mm-hmm. So, and I think Steve Bannon said this. Mm-hmm. I did not listen to the podcast. I read the quote. He called it muzzle velocity, which I believe is a gun term.
Yes.
Just keep firing stuff.
Yes.
So by the time people mobilize to take on one, we're already 4 down the way.
Load the system with shit.
Yeah.
And if you want the $5 word instead, it's called a gish gallop.
What is that?
A gish gallop is a argument technique where you overwhelm your opponent with information so that they just can't even process anything anymore.
Got it. I believe I've done that before in my career with all the talking.
Yes.
Zooming out just a little bit, if anyone listens to this podcast, they know that I am deeply concerned for the University of Toledo. Mm-hmm. It's not news that football programs at schools provide a lot of revenue, a lot of resources, a lot of income, and maybe you can divide that down for me. But I am concerned with where Toledo football is, perhaps being left behind by the larger schools, Ohio State, Alabama, Clemson. My short version is they all pull away. They form their own league.
Yes.
They get all the TV money.
Yes.
And UT and Ohio and Western Michigan have to be on Tubi.
Yes.
Sorry for that. On Tubi with microscopic resources.
Right.
Which might mean they can't keep the programs alive. And if the football programs go for these places, especially at a city commuter school like Toledo, we have a big problem. And if the university is a big problem, the city, which for the most part has had its trajectory, its arrow going upward, has a massive problem. Mm-hmm. Tell me I shouldn't be so fatalistic.
I think you should be more fatalistic about the resources that were coming from the state and federal level being pulled away than the marketing campaign for any of these universities. That's the issue. They are taking away the funds that subsidize these institutions. That's what they want to go away. They don't like what they have to say. So, for example, the Ohio Congress really likes Ohio State football. They don't like the whole rest of Ohio State.
Right. Yeah.
And so they want those benefits because that's their team. It's my team too.
Sure.
I grew up a Buckeye. Yeah, I would be way more concerned about how wealth is redistributed in this country. Taxes is a dirty word, but that in the upper bands of income has moved over to want from need. And that, I think, I mean, when I started teaching tax code to my environmental science students, that was really the writing on the wall. I'm like, back to that energy question. Can you really, truly accumulate billions of energies? You can't do that yourself. That requires a society to do that. And if you don't have that society, then you don't have your billions of things. And so, that comes back to wanting to cut the budgets down and education being one of the first things to go. And I want to pay for it because there are enough people who have enough money, those elites that you were talking about from the Ivies, their kids will have whatever they need. Mm-hmm. My kids over at UT, no.
Is there any soft landing for that? Obviously, COVID hypercharged everything.
It did.
Good and bad.
It did.
And I had been screaming for a long time. I guess I'm an ancient millennial. I was screaming to younger millennials and younger, like, ask a couple more questions before you dive into that education or whatever. And I wasn't trying to scold millennials. They were the last generation to be told, you have to go to college, blah, blah, blah.
Yes.
It seemed like some people were pulling back. I just went to the Junior Achievement Inspire event last week, and there's tons of employers out there looking for kids, giving them, like, what we didn't have, alternatives, trades to go into that pay.
I'm so glad it's happening.
Really, really well. How did those places, pulling some students away from what you did, potentially, did that give you any fear? Because less students, less potential for job.
No, because the students who were all there understood why they were there. It changed a lot of things for the better. It took down enrollments, but I think UT's leadership has done more to damage our enrollments than anything else. Two questions. Well, one point in the question on that.
You get the kid out that's like, oh, I'm just taking this environmental science class, right? With lower enrollment, you've got to charge the ones that are there more. Speaking of things like taxes, how did that play out? What did leadership do to damage enrollment, in your opinion?
Well, there were a lot of distractions. The merger really fundamentally changed what the university could do. And President Jacobs did what he did. President Gaber came in. That was more the academic side of the house. President Postal came in. That was the medical side of the house. They got all those things kind of in place, but enrollment continued to decline. And part of the problem is that there hasn't been outreach to the local community. It's very frustrating to me to sit down with my friends who have juniors and seniors in high school, and they're like, we're not getting anything from UT. Why aren't we getting anything from UT? These are alumni of UT. Why aren't we getting things from UT? I don't know. Let's go ask enrollment. And if you look through that record, you'll see a long list of just turnaround. The last VP of enrollment didn't even live in Toledo. And so back to the elites, they come into Toledo, they don't understand Toledo. I have a tremendous leg up because I'm from Toledo.
Yeah.
I have the same insecurities as everyone else in this city. You probably felt it when you moved here. You're like, why are these people so down on themselves? That's who we are. It just is who we are. And those inferiority complexes are deep. And when you don't show up from your own backyard and say, yeah, this is an important choice for you to make, you could come here, they're not going to make that choice.
Why? I believe in do what you're good at and do it as often as possible. With the radio station, we try to get the most out of our most loyal listeners rather than chasing people who just tune in and out. Why the pullback from people here? I've seen it recently. I know there's been some programs. Why wasn't UT at every TPS, Sylvania, Maumee career day?
Don't know.
Okay. But they were not, right?
They were not.
There was a pullback on that?
They just aren't doing it. The thing I heard with the new person is that this is a 2026 thing. Like, you don't have time.
Right.
You don't have time. Every one of my students that I have right now is here because they have to be. We don't have students who don't have to be. They're at BG, they're at Cincinnati, they're at Ohio State.
Yeah.
If they have a choice, they're not choosing this.
Yeah.
And the ones who are here are like, oh, this sucks,
It's like 13th grade. Sorry.
No, you're not going to offend me. Remember, I grew up here and we called it Bancroft High back in the 90s.
When I think I'm from Philadelphia.
Yeah.
We called Community College of Philadelphia KKF. Because you assume people in the community college couldn't spell.
Yes.
They called, if you couldn't get into Penn State, Maine, you went to Penn State Abington, which they called my high school, George Washington High School, 13th grade. So I get that mindset. And it's disappointing to see a university of what was once great enrollment and prestige, again, unfortunately, seeming to recede down to a commuter school.
Yes.
I want to go back to the football thing.
Yeah.
Can you tell me how much football keeps the rest of the lights on for the entire university?
It doesn't. It takes money.
It takes money.
Yes.
So, okay.
So it's marketing.
So, absolutely.
It's marketing.
So what happens when my premonition that UT gets left behind from the big schools, and now those marketing dollars disappear.
Well, let me fill you in on a secret. Most of the students who are at UT could give two shits about football.
Sure.
They don't care.
Sure.
They're just there to get a degree and get out of there as fast as they can.
But if the football team ceases to exist, you have a big marketing thing that's gone, right?
It is. You'll have to figure out how to market around that.
And
that might actually be a benefit.
It will force them to do something they haven't done.
It will force them to show up to the area high schools and recruit students.
Will it be too late?
That's my worry.
Yeah.
That's really my concern.
And to take this back to the very beginning, if all this plays out, even in a small way, the city has serious problems.
Serious problems. This is real bad for Toledo.
Because the university, like the football team being marketing for education, the school is marketing for Toledo.
That's right.
The city.
100%. 100%. It terrifies me for this city.
And a small sports note, I saw that after the NFL draft, there was something about Toledo being on a list that they're one of only like 11 schools with all the big names that have put kids in the first 2 rounds or 3 rounds of the draft in the last couple of years.
Handel knows how to train them, man.
You know what? He should win some fucking bowl games and not lose to... I know that's great and it appeals to kids, but as somebody who has followed the program now for over a decade, there's... What are you laughing at?
It's because they all come into class the week after, the first week of the spring semester. And I'm like, what was that shit?
You were at 10 points.
Did you guys even show up?
I think the number was I
get to have that conversation, Eric. I get to
bring me in.
I'll bring you over. I'll bring them over.
Tell me if you saw this note. I think it's accurate. I believe every game that they lost last year, they were a double-digit favorite.
Yeah.
Do you know if that's accurate? We're close?
That sounds about par for the course. I can say that.
That's cool. You put your balls out there against Notre Dame, and you upset Mississippi State.
And then they take the foot off the pedal.
They do.
I'm like, why aren't you hungry now?
Is it because
it's like watching Ohio State lose to Michigan. I mean, then the foot was back on the pedal.
Yeah. That's my problem with what Candle's done with the program. It's a very winning program, but they lose too many games that they shouldn't. And that's super problematic because, yes, I love that Quinyon Mitchell is a Super Bowl champion and the other kids made it in. I think it would be better for marketing if God forbid you made it to the last week of maybe your Liberty and get into one of those New Year's Day games or bigger bowl games.
Right.
Or people are like, oh shit, I want to watch this Toledo team. I've heard like that goes farther than Quinyon Mitchell went to the NFL.
Right.
So that's my sports. And don't even get me started on the basketball team that in my lifetime, an entire Eric, like, do you know how impossible it is to miss the tournament for 4 decades? It is almost physically, athletically impossible for that to happen.
They pulled it off.
I know. Thank God for the women's team.
We go to the women's games. They're more fun.
Tell me something else about the university that you don't think gets talked about enough, good or bad. I know and there's a lot of bad.
No, I want to focus on the positive. I mean, the thing that gets missed is there are departments that are just killing it, and ours is one of them. We have remained constant despite what feels like efforts to undermine that, and there are others as well. And I don't think that gets talked about enough. It gets lost in we're down half from what we were at. And there is a huge opportunity for any young person coming in to really engage with faculty because there's nobody here.
Smaller class sizes now, right?
Yeah.
You wanted that, you got it.
If you want in our department, if you want to do research with faculty, you can do research with faculty. It's not competitive by any means. There are so many opportunities for these young folks, and in NSM and in natural sciences and mathematics, I mean that's kind of true across the board throughout the whole college. The reorganization of the liberal arts is going to be what's terrifying.
How come?
Well, one, enrollment's down. Two, most of those majors. I mean, this is when they cut the. Oh my God. Yeah, I'm going to say it.
Are you sure?
I am. So when they cut the programs that they cut, when they cut them, what was that? 4 weeks ago? What are the optics of cutting the Spanish program right now? They're just not even thinking about this stuff. Now, I know from the back end that the Spanish program didn't have any enrollments.
Right.
That's the reason it was cut. But doing it in a DEI sweep, that is the dumbest shit I've ever heard.
If I were doing that, I would do that because my stomach, my intestines were moving when I read Josh Williams' op-ed in the Blade, and I think he said there was like 5 students in all these programs. So from an economic perspective, it makes sense if they simply would have gone, look, there's nobody taking these, and we
57 students across all those majors.
We want to move these resources into Todd's department. We want to move these resources.
They took one of our degrees away. They took away our MS in geology. What they didn't say was that we have an MS and a PhD in environmental science now.
Yeah,
we're not doing hard rock geology.
It was a suck up to the anti-DEI initiatives.
Completely.
And you know what? Where I get it, this is where I go, I don't agree, but I understand.
Yeah.
Not that I ever would have done this, but it's a suck up to make sure they continually don't lose more money, right?
Right. That may have been the calculus.
Yeah, but it's
I don't know what makes up their choices, but it's that choice is reflective of many other choices that we've watched before, where it's like, why did you do it that way? And there's no explanation.
To kiss the ring. And
yeah, I suppose.
It's funny you mentioned Spanish too. Now I get that this goes against much of the current climate, but 10 years ago, about 10 years or so ago, and I don't know what high schools did with this, you almost would have demanded or made part of every middle school or high school curriculum Spanish because of the growth of that population here. Now, again, it looks like, we might as well we're going to throw them out of the country, and we're going to throw your language out of our school too.
And we're going to bring in white South Africans in the meantime. I just can't with it anymore.
A couple more minutes, unless we get going again, but what else is on your mind? Eats at your craw, good or bad?
Yeah, that's a lot of what's eating my craw right now.
How do you escape it, other than turning it off? Where does Todd go to love things?
So I did that over the weekend. I went crappie fishing.
What is that?
It's a type of fish, and it's fun, and I like it. And that's the redneck coming out. And my wife was like, "Oh my gosh, you look happy," and I'm like, "Oh, really?" And she didn't mean that like, "Oh, you're just happy." She's like, I haven't seen you happy in like a year.
And she doesn't know when she's going to see it again.
And she doesn't know if she can see it again. She's like, why don't you go fishing again? Already. Like, go fishing. Because it's hard, That's where the therapist comes in. I mean, we could go back and talk about how difficult COVID was and what that did to me. I mean, that almost wrecked me.
Getting it?
No. Living in that environment in the education sense and having responsibility for 400 or 500 people who need to get things done in that environment and trying to provide something of value during that time and the internal pressure to perform and the loneliness. I mean, I was in a room by myself for 20 hours a day because I was recording in my bedroom and everybody else was in the rest of the house. We had a 4-year-old, and Erica was able to manage Madeline out there, and I just was by myself talking at a screen. And you want to talk about neurotransmitter depletion. It was terrible. And it just continued on. It didn't stop. Like, a lot of people were just like,
that was kind of me.
Yeah,
It's like because the world was quiet. Us introverts.
Well, that
got some sympathy.
My friend Jillian, who's deeply introverted and only comes out for fascinating as well. She was like, "Are you okay? Because I'm getting a little weird right now, not being around people." And she's like, "You have to be dying," and I'm like, "I'm dying. I am dying. I'm dying."
Yeah, I am very fortunate. I did not suffer the darkness that many did during COVID. I say it ad nauseum that if there is one silver lining from COVID, it's that people stop taking for granted any kind of mental wellness.
100%, and that's what really changed for a lot of our students because our faculty realized. I mean, I had during the beginning. I mean, I heard everything during that time period. They had students who were sitting in a coffee shop parking lot trying to get Wi-Fi to take their classes. It's just crazy stuff. And, you know, that was where I learned it was okay to just talk about this stuff openly. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm in a dark place, folks. I'm in a dark place. Now it's not clanging around in my head anymore. And I learned a lot about my own mental health and finding a therapist that really was able to help me address some of the unique stresses that I have, because I have unique stresses. And if anything, my therapist is there just to normalize that I'm not being crazy about these things, and, you know, it's whatever. But I mean, that's standard issue in my classes is take your meds, eat your food, go to bed.
Yeah.
You got to do that. If you aren't taking care of those things, you can't learn. Learning happens distraction-free. And if you're not taking care of those things, you're in a bad place. And, you know, and I started openly talking about imposter syndrome. I'm like, yeah, here I am. I'm up here. I'm fine with you guys. You put me with a bunch of suits in the administration, and I might as well just go back over to the kids' table because I'd rather be over there. It feels better there, you know?
Isn't imposter syndrome more so lacking confidence in what you're good at, like not believing in yourself?
It can be.
Okay.
It can be. It's really about feeling like you don't belong there, is what it comes down to, and people deal with it differently. Some people will hide from the situation. Some people get extra aggressive about it, and back to this being right thing and the fragility of certain segments of our population. They are, I think that's really what it is they're just afraid you're going to find out they don't know what the fuck they're talking about.
1,000%.
Yes.
And if you read the news closely, he is losing these battles. What did somebody call, we know it was Liberation Day.
Yes.
Oh God. Somebody called it like capitulation days.
Capitulation day.
I on a mental health aspect, I knew this was coming, but again, I will take the good, and hopefully the ball of the pendulum will set in the middle.
Yeah.
And you probably see it a lot with the students you engage with. Oh, I lost it. Hang on one second. Somebody texted me. We went from ignoring too much and suicides were quieted, even though they are now, to majority in UK now self-identify as neurodivergent. Therapy speak has become too mainstream. We have not only self-diagnosed, but self-inflicted, especially the kids you talk to.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it became so comfortable to have something. You gave yourself something when you let maybe just a bad day turn into something more potentially diagnosable. I hope we find that middle.
I do too. And that's what I talked to him about. I'm like, okay, so if you have a diagnosis, that's one thing. If you self-diagnose, that's another thing. But in either case, here's the structure for how to deal with this kind of thing. And, I think I end up with a lot of actually neurodivergent students, particularly in the ADHD realm, where they're attracted to nature. It's the place they feel calm. It's natural noise, not this created noise that we have around us, and it makes us nuts. And we're all really seeking something there. You see the same personalities emerge over and over and over once you get to that level. But they're also the people who couldn't pull their shit together well enough to get into a better school, especially the ones who are coming from Southview and north, from Sylvania, from Anthony Wayne, from Perrysburg, Bedford, coming from the suburbs. It was probably more related to the fact they couldn't get their crap together than any other factor. Their parents could probably afford for them to go someplace else, but they weren't going to get scholarships. They had too many issues in the way academically for them to go to those places. And so they end up with me, which is fine, because I'm like, we're doing therapy in class today, guys.
Yeah.
Here we are.
Trees.
Yeah.
It is wild to bring back to like the core of humanity and what we are. There is, I believe, so much science to back up. Much like you said, the best way to have a good day is to sleep, to get a good night's sleep, and to eat well. The best remedy for many people isn't necessarily medication or therapy. It's just go detach and walk through nature.
Go outside.
Yeah.
You get a hit of dopamine for looking at a digital picture of a leaf.
Yeah.
Imagine if we just went and looked at real leaves.
Yeah. And now, I've said to kids for years when I've spoken to middle schoolers and high school kids, like, guys, I know it sucks. I know that the bullying follows you everywhere because of your phones. So does the help. Like,
oh yeah, absolutely.
In 8th grade, when I was getting bullied or being the bully, like, it either stayed at school or for some people it stayed at home.
Right.
Now, like, literally, you can chat GPT. This bullying is doing X, Y, or Z and get a pretty good answer, if not other than 988, 741, 741. And that's why I do and many others do the work that we do, that, like, resources.
Right. And that's what they need to hear. And that's what I do try to normalize. I'm not there to give diagnoses. I'm not there to be your primary therapist. I'm there to help them understand that there are people around them. And if you want to, they're primarily, in my majors courses, they're there to solve environmental problems. And if you want to solve environmental problems, you have to solve the social problems. The environmental justice is tied to the social justice. The social justice is tied to the environmental justice. You can't unhook them.
We know that, I'm sure you've taught this in some way, that the earth will always have its issues, but they've become much more serious since the late 19th century when we started dicking around with technology and energy. Is that accurate?
The way I couch that one is that the earth will be just fine after it shakes off its human infection.
Exactly.
It'll be just fine.
It's so when I was a little boy, I loved dinosaurs. Loved dinosaurs.
Can relate.
It maddens me now that we've discovered so many more, that some have been like,
I don't know what any of them are.
Right. Like, I go to the toy aisle.
Same.
I'm like,
what is that?
Did Jurassic Park make that up, or was that an actual dinosaur? And it's like, there are some sports fans who only know the Cowboys as great teams. There are only some sports fans who know the Patriots as great teams. Right. Like, I remember the Stegosaurus and the Triceratops.
That's right.
Like,
I remember when you had to work to find a book with dinosaurs in it. And it was gold.
And now that book is 1,000 pages long because we've discovered so much. And I love that many people get caught up. And this is where, like, you talk about 57 students were directly affected by the loss of those programs. Forget about the optics of things otherwise. 57 students in an enrollment of thousands, and the 250,000 people here in our community. 57. It's a microscopic percentage.
It is.
Humans, we scoff at dinosaurs. The meteor got them. Yeah, not going to happen to us. They were around for like 150 million years, right?
Yeah.
Long
time.
We have not even like nicked that. If we make it that long, we're not going to make it that long.
So that's my standard bit. Mother Nature is a badass lady. She is sick of our shit. And when mama ain't happy, nobody's happy.
Yeah. And as I've come to see, and I hope this turns, and we'll wrap up with this, I hope this turns people who have regret as well. your insurance costs a lot. You can't even get insurance now in X, Y, or Z because of
the government's having to mandate insurance in Florida.
California,
and I'm
Florida.
Sure California is right there now.
When I have my city people who come by and they want to grow Toledo and bring people here and population this, I'm cynical. I think you are as well.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, you can do whatever you want. Make all the bike lanes you want. You know what the best thing for Toledo's population growth will be? Florida being underwater.
Correct.
Because as we've seen population shift other places.
I already know climate refugees.
Yeah.
They've
come back this way?
They have come this way.
Yeah. There will be plenty more.
And it's just at the beginning. Michigan is the best place in the world to go through climate change.
Yeah.
It is. It has all the resources. It has the infrastructure. It has all the things. And it's going to have a climate that is soothed by having the Great Lakes wrapped around us. Climate
refugees is a phrase that I'll steal.
Yes, please do, because people need to understand what's going to happen.
Yeah.
There is a reason there are so many outside investors buying up all of Toledo. There's a reason, because they know they're going to get their money.
I have something interesting to run by you off the podcast.
Yeah.
My last thing, I'll ask you a question as the scientist that you are. The climate from where I grew up, Philadelphia, we're roughly at the same latitude, closer to the ocean there, but you've got the water here, roughly the same.
Yep.
More snow in the Midwest than I got out east.
Right.
But I have noticed, and not so much this year has become the anomaly. The seasons have shifted. I remember April's Easter break, could be outside in a short sleeve shirt playing ball. April is still cold for the most part. I've kind of resigned myself to, we're not safe for spring-like weather in Toledo till after Mother's Day, sometimes Memorial Day. The good thing is we might be able to wear shorts for Halloween. This is a climate thing, right?
That is. That's the strengthening of cycles.
Is it, and that's exacerbated by humans. It would have happened at some point, but maybe not as intense or near as the last one.
The issue is how ocean circulation is circulating water. This last atmospheric river that just drowned out Maryland and Virginia. If there's more energy in the ocean, there's more water vapor going into the air, and what happens is the patterns begin to strengthen. And so the places that are dry get drier, the places that are wet get wetter. And neither of those scenarios is ideal, because our species exploded during a time where it was just neutral. And that's not the default state of the Earth.
Yeah.
We're an accident. Ice age, we should be descending into an ice age.
Yeah.
But it stopped and then it's gone up. That's the anomaly. That's what they call the hockey stick or whatever.
The water is affected from the melting ice caps, right?
No, it's all about the heat going into the ocean, and then there's more water vapor. So when someone says, well, there's more ice in Antarctica, in eastern Antarctica, because there's more water vapor in the polar cell that wasn't there ever before, even despite the fact that it's melting faster. It's all about water vapor and where it's going. That's, again, back to the energy comes into the planet. We know exactly what happens when we warm things up, because it happened 5,000 years ago. Tallgrass prairie moved from the Central Plains all the way into Pennsylvania and then went back. But along the way, it stopped going back down, and that's the problem. And we know why it did that. It's Milankovitch cycles.
What's that?
The Milankovitch cycles. This is the one I like to drop on somebody when they're trying to talk down to me. I'm like, so you say the Earth just has natural cycles, like the Milankovitch cycles? And they say, the what? And I said Milankovitch cycles, because that's the null hypothesis of climate, is that we are in an ice age and there was an interglacial and we exploded all over the planet during the interglacial and we should be descending back into the ice age. And they're just like, what? And what it has to do is with the tilt of the Earth, the wobble of the Earth, and the rotation around the sun. Sometimes it's elliptical, sometimes it's circular. And what happens is these cycles align, and then solar forcing at 65 north, so up in Canada, across Siberia, when that is happening, it warms things up because you have that much more landmass receiving the sun's energy than when it's further south. And so, and if it's on the opposite end of that, you think about Antarctica is a block of ice with water all the way around it. The Arctic Ocean is a block of water with land all the way around it. And so they function oppositely. And that's what's driving that cycle. But that just happened. Mm-hmm. It's going away. And there's a series of ways to measure back in time. And I don't know if you really want to get into all how much and how far this goes. But there's ways to identify what the climate was like at different points in time.
Yeah.
And it's real regular. It's every 80 to 100,000 years, those cycles align, and then you have an interglacial.
And here we are screwing things up.
Here we are. You know, people were arguing if we were in a new era, moving from what was called the Pleistocene, which was the late area, into the Holocene, or the Anthropocene is what they were trying to get. Humans.
We're trying to make a new name, right?
They're trying to make a new name. Well, they threw it out finally. I was like, thank goodness, because if you cut off the humans, you would just descend back into a Pleistocene thing. The Earth would reabsorb the carbon back into its systems, and we would go back into the Milankovitch-driven cycles.
It would be so sad when I read that story about trying to name our own place and time.
Yes, the
that
hubris.
Is so self-serving of humanity. And I get that we are atop the food chain, but
I like to do this. When we're done, we're a layer of sediment this thick on the bottom of the ocean.
Your finger is about an inch apart?
My finger is about an inch apart. We are a layer of sediment, an inch in total, that is loaded with with radioactivity, plastic, and phosphorus. And that's all we will ever be.
Thanks for all the time.
I'm glad to be here, man.
Good to meet you, too.
Good to meet you.